Hey guys, Stacy from Easy Acupuncture School, where we take the mystical and make it practical. I'm here in my home office today. My regular office is getting its carpet cleaned. So I'm here and I'm glad to see you guys. Today is going to be the first lecture in a series of what's going to be acupuncture tricks and tips. Today, we are going to talk about something a little less concrete than a lot of the tips that I have coming up, meaning ECM, TDP, cupping, pediatrics. But today I'm going to talk about something that I didn't anticipate talking about, but I saw this in a forum and it made me kind of sad. Somebody was talking about being burned out with acupuncture or how to prevent that. And this lecture is going to be a brief one, but it's going to be about how to do that. The first thing I want to say, oh, wait a minute, before I do all that, just so you guys know who I am, here are my street creds. Who am I? Stacy Hewitt, licensed acupuncturist and licensed massage therapist. I've been working full time for 13 years, teaching for 7. Here's all of my Easy Acupuncture School YouTube channel info. And there's the Easy Acupuncture School email address. Email me if you want to get on my newsletter. If you get on my newsletter, then you get access to a lot of lecture notes, especially with the lectures in the past. But anyway, um, it's good content. And I'm not gonna use your email address to advertise anything. And back to back to the story. Back to what we were talking about. How not to get burned out with acupuncture. Of course, all of us every once in a while will have a little ennui, with any job we have, no matter what it is. Every once in a while we get the blahs. But this is talking about being burned out. And as acupuncturists, I feel at least we shouldn't get burned out. I'm not saying that don't you get burned out. I'm just saying we shouldn't feel that way. And here's a saying that I saw, and it's more of a paraphrase, I guess, but it was something, and I don't even remember. This is something I saw in one of the classics that I was reading years ago. But it's basically saying that, practicing acupuncture should be medicine for the soul of the practitioner. Whoa, that's pretty heavy, right? We'll get back to that. What does that mean? But first of all, we're going to go through the more immediate things, and then we're going to get into the meat of all of it. One of the things to think about, well, here are a few of the things, is you don't overwork yourself. When we first start out as acupuncturists, starting a business, we will take anybody and everybody whenever, because we just need to make some money so we can pay the rent, right? So we have this feeling of deprivation of like, the struggle. The struggle is real, as the saying goes. But as you practice, as the year goes by, you start filling up your clinic so you can survive. But it's very hard to get out of that survival mode, feeling like, oh, I've got to take this patient. I've got to be working on Sunday. I've got to work really late. Suddenly, you're overworking yourself. So when you get to that point, when you feel like you're surviving, start looking at your schedule and making sure you're not overworking yourself, because that's an easy way to start getting burned out. If you're just working all the time, working late in the evenings, working when you don't want to be working, that'll burn you out. So the other thing is, in when I was in that massage school a long time ago, we talked about all these creative ways to do this. But one of the things when you're any practitioner, but especially when you're young or first starting off, make sure that you are shielding yourself from the other person's energy. And when I say that, sure, it can be the Chinese woo-woo energy, whatever you want to call it. But also, it's more about, I mean, if you're sensitive to a person's energy, yes, shield yourself. But it's more about their stuff, making sure that you have solid boundaries so you can delineate between their stuff and your stuff, right? And making yourself putting a shield up to make sure that you're not getting triggered by their stuff. And sometimes that takes a little work, but the more you interact with people, because we're interacting as healthcare practitioners, we're interacting with people on a different way than you would be interacting with them, say if you went to bingo night, or you were hanging out with your friends. So some techniques and tips for doing that. There's tons that you can look up. That's what the interwebs, the internet's all about. But it when I was in massage school, things that we would talk about is feeling your feet underneath of you and grounding yourself, breathing slowly into the dantian, and just really feeling the earth. The earth will protect you. That'll help you ground yourself, put a shield up. Imagine there's a shield in front of you, an energetic shield that's preventing these cosmic rays from coming in, this person's energy or this person's stuff from coming in. Don't take on their stuff. That's their stuff, not your stuff. Don't take it on. Imagine a shield. Think about grounding, and that'll help prevent and building your own boundaries. That will help prevent you from taking on their stuff. Okay. The other thing is if you feel like you're starting to get burned out, learn a new technique. That's exciting and exhilarating. So always study and I mean, like I said, I'm working on this big Korean acupuncture project. I've been practicing for 13 years. I always study. I always look for something new. It's interesting. It keeps it revitalizes and invigorates your zeal for Chinese medicine. So that helps with getting burned out too, or feeling like you're getting burned out. But here is the meat, the important stuff that's coming up here. The big thing is to have an A, B, or C client list. And what does that mean? That means you have A-level clients that when you look at your schedule and you see their names, you're happy that they're coming in. You like them. They're easy. They're an easy treatment. You resonate with them really well. That's what A is. B is maybe you have somebody that you don't click with 100%. Or maybe their case is a little more difficult. So it's a little more challenging. It's a little more work. That's a B level client, right? And then you look in your book and you see that person's name and you're like, oh my God. Oh my, I would rather roll around in a bunch of sandpaper naked than seeing that person. That's a C level person. So what do we do with that? So your job is to move your C's to a B and B's to an A. This was told to me before I was even an acupuncturist. We had in our acupuncture business class, we had every student had to get up and do a little presentation. And one student got up and did this presentation where she talked to a person that had been practicing acupuncture for 20 years. And that person said this is the greatest piece of advice she had. And I remember sitting in classes like, what are they talking about? What do you mean? But move your C's to a B and B's to an A. And that will make life so much easier. That makes coming into the clinic every day a happy occasion. So how do we do that? So to move your B's to an A, it's about building better rapport with them. How do we do that? Like, you probably have a whole class on that, but some of the things that you can do is make sure you're polite and friendly, which I know you all are going to be. But the other thing is to make everything that you're doing relatable to the person. Make them be able to relate to or understand what your treatment is, what they're doing, and make yourself relatable to them. Ask them about their kids, ask them about their dog, ask them about their trip. Make their life relatable. So it seems like you're on a mano a mano basis. You're friend on friend basis. You don't become your patient's best friend. That goes down a slippery slope. But make sure that they feel like you relate to them as a person. But also make sure that they feel like they understand what's going on, albeit explaining what you're doing, or a lot of times, unless I've worked with a person, or unless, and very rarely does this come about, but unless I know that a person really understands Chinese medicine, I don't go in with my guns blazing and talking about, like, well, you've got liver qi stagnation, or you've got, Yang Rising, or whatever. I don't use a lot of Chinese medical terms when I talk to my patients, so I don't want to confuse them. If I've seen them for a long time, then I might talk to them a little bit about that. I'll joke with some of them and say, "Oh no, here comes another lesson in Chinese medicine." But very rarely do I start off talking to them in Chinese, medical terms. I talk to them in terms that they can relate to. So you build your rapport by being friendly, polite, and making them feel like they relate to you. How do you get to a C to a B? Well, that can be a little bit more difficult, but sometimes that has to do with everything that I just mentioned with the B, but then also with the C person, sometimes you just have to reframe their behaviors into something more palatable. And let me give you an example. Well, that's the case, or sometimes with C's, and it's very rare, but sometimes you just have to break up with them because you can't reframe their behaviors or their activities. I had a patient one time that was very particular, meaning, and I am all about trying to make sure somebody is comfortable, climate-wise, noise-wise, needle-wise, everything-wise. I am very conscientious about that. But this person was really over the top. I mean, it was always like the lights, the sound, the music, the temperature. And I'm all about making people comfortable and trying to acquiesce them with all that. But I mean, it got to be a point where she would bring her, I'd have to play her music, and then it's like, which is fine. And I'd have to turn the sound machines off, and I've got to get the lights at just the right level. It's not like turning them off or turning them on. They've got to be adjusted the right level, and then I'd get them at the right level, and she'd be like, "Oh no, you got to turn them up." And then she'd get on the table and she's like, "Turn them off." It was a little bit over the top. And then she was also this conspiracy theorist. So, I'd always have to hear how there's, Western medicine is alive, or, there's nanobots in our water. And I can deal with all that, because I'm just here to help. I'm just here to help. But it gets to be a lot sometimes. And I just remember one day she came into my office and she was worried about there was some air blowing on her. So I was like, well, I can't, I'm sorry, these ceilings are 12 feet tall. I can't reach the vent to redirect that. And there was no way to turn the vent anyway. And I was like, I'll be happy to go. I can turn the air off to make sure it's not blowing on you. And I did that. And I came back in, there's nothing blowing, but she was like convinced that there was something blowing on her. And, this non-existent air was blowing on her. And I'm like, well, ma'am, I'll readjust this more. And then nothing was blowing on her. I'll readjust this more when I go out. and then I'll check with you to make sure you're okay. And so I got all the needles in, and I said I'll readjust this and then check with you. And as I was leaving the room, she was like, "This air blowing on me," which there was nothing blowing on her. She's like, "This is I can hear this in my head to this day." This is a long time ago, but she was like, "This is the worst day of my life." And it was funny when I heard that something a switch clicked in me. And instead of this being kind of a frustrating mess, it hit me that if this non-existent air blowing on you, which nothing is blowing on you, is really the worst day of your life, then you've had a pretty good life. And it became funny to me. And not like funny, like, haha, I'm going to be laughing in her face. But it was just like, it made interacting with her more, I just became more laid back about it. Instead of being frustrating, it became funny. And like I said, I would not laugh in her face, which I never did. But all the times that she's sitting there talking to me about how the hypersonic missiles from China are going to come in, and she wanted to get my mailing address because she was like, because I do all of my appointment reminders electronically, and she's like, let me get your mailing address so when the Chinese attack us with these hypersonic missiles and our phone lines go down, I'll have a way to communicate with you via the U.S. mail. And I'm like, lady, if we were attacked by missiles and our power grid is down, I don't think the U.S. mail is going to get here. But anyway, or it's like the nanobots in the water are going to get us, or I mean, on and on and on and on. But anyway, like I said, you just have to try to reframe the patient, their behaviors, into something that's more palatable for you. And if you can't, don't hang on to them. Break up with them. And if you break up with a patient, make sure that don't say, I don't want to see you anymore, and you just drop them. Make sure that you refer them out to somebody else so they feel like they have a contiguous medical path. Don't let them feel like you just drop them and they're just isolated. Just at least give them a contiguous path of of medical service. Send them to a naturopath, send them to a therapist, send them to if they need to go see a Western MD, send them there. But make sure that they don't feel like they've just been dropped. And also be aware when you get ready to break up with somebody, it's something like fate or something where they never want you to break up with them, even though they will tell you all kinds of mess about how nothing's working and this is horrible, and you're just listening, going like, "Oh my gosh," and you finally say, "I don't feel like this is working," and I know a naturopathic doctor that let's go send you to, or maybe you need to get some panels done, and right when you're getting ready to tell them that, they'll bring you a cake or something like that. The last person, very rarely do I have to break up with anybody because usually I can bump them up. But the last person I tried to break up with, I was getting ready to drop the bomb on them and be like, I feel like you need to get checked out for some other ways. She brought me a cake in. How do you break up with somebody that brings you a cake? But anyway. So A, B, and C, that's really important because if you don't get those C's out of your schedule, you will get burned out. So think about that. And then the next thing to think about, I'm just looking at my notes here because I wrote some notes down. Usually I have a PowerPoint, but I didn't do that today. But the other thing to think about is sometimes people don't like me saying this, but I like to be truthful with people. Sometimes Chinese medicine doesn't work. And I was talking to a student the other day, and they were like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And sometimes it just doesn't work. I have seen over the years in thousands of people, I've seen it do incredible things. But once in a blue moon, it won't work. And sometimes it can be structural, like sometimes someone's physical structure is so far out that there's very you can't do anything. Like bone on bone, it's just difficult. I mean, bone on bone is, I mean, serious, like, you know, all the acupuncture in the world's not going to help with that. Um, sometimes things it doesn't work out. Acupuncture is like, imagine this. It is like a key on this key ring of other medical modalities. And a lot of times that key will work on a lot of locks. Like I'm opening the door, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't resonate, doesn't work for folks. And that's okay. Not all medicines work for everybody. And when you realize that, that helps. I went to a class early in my acupuncture career, and the guy was like, if Chinese medicine fails, it's not Chinese medicine failing, it's you failing. You failed, not Chinese medicine. Well, no, when I first heard that, I was bummed out, but I don't know about that. Like I said, sometimes acupuncture, the treatments, it doesn't resonate with the person at that point in time. That's not what they need. Doesn't mean it's not always going to work. It just means that sometimes that's not the medicine that they need at that point in time. Let me give you an example. It's like I've had this happen a couple of times. I am probably, I don't want to say expert, but I am really a big person to go to for mental health stuff in Chinese medicine. And that's one thing that I spent years studying, and I'm really good at that. But sometimes you're working with folks that have some mental health, anxiety stuff, and it's not working. Sometimes they do need to see a doctor. Sometimes they need to, if like, if they're so extremely OCD, sometimes they need something that's in the Western medical world to calm them down a little bit, to allow you to get in there and do some hardcore work with that. But you have to calm it down to a point where you can do anything. But other times, think of it this way. Some other times I've had patients, I've had two recently that have had some, and they're not the only two that I've ever seen with this, and this is not a syndrome or condition, it's just an example. But I've had folks that have come in and they've had this really strong anxiety response. And well, a strong anxiety. And you find out that part of their picture is they're separated from something, meaning like the past two folks they were separated from their husbands or wives or partners, and I helped work with them to help them maintain their anxiety. But guess what? A lot of it cleared up as soon as their partner came back. It's very funny. So, as much great acupuncture as they were getting, what was really the cure for them is their partner being back there. Once their partner was back, I was able to start working with their resilience to their stress and resilience to some of their dependency. But sometimes, like I said, you could do all the acupuncture in the world, but really they needed to get the right thing that was the right medicine for them at the time. And then, like I said, doesn't mean that acupuncture is not ever going to work for them. It just means maybe right at that time it's not. So I, as a young acupuncturist, would get really bummed out when things didn't work because I didn't realize that sometimes acupuncture doesn't resonate for the person at that time. But I would get really bummed out. And one thing to remember, I had a patient that was an anesthesiologist that I saw for a while, and him and we talked about a lot of stuff because he was very curious about Chinese medicine. So I talked to him about it a bunch. And then one day I asked him, I was like, well, what happens for you, or how do you guys deal with things when they don't work. And he looked and laughed a little bit. He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Things don't work all the time in Western medicine." And sadly, this is true because he was, he's an anesthesiologist, so he was working with people, life and death all the time. So he's like, but he was like, sometimes things don't work out. And he's like, as long as you've tried your best, and then you've tried your best, what else could you do? But but the one thing that he told me that has always stuck in my mind and is a great help to me, he said, when I was in medical school, we had a very old doctor, and he said this thing to me. It's like, what your job is going to be is you're going to cure a few, you're going to try to ameliorate many more, but you're going to help and comfort, try to help and comfort all. And that's really a big thing. It's like you're going to be able to successfully, and this is true. It is true. It's how it works. You're going to successfully be able to cure a few. You're going to successfully be able to ameliorate, make many people better, but you've got to try to help. You've got to try to comfort all. And if you keep that in mind, that helps you from getting burned out because you're bummed out when things don't work. As long as you've tried to help and as long as you've tried to comfort all, that's incredible. That's awesome. That you should never get burned out. You should feel like, man, I really try to help somebody. And that's an awesome feeling. So remember at the very beginning, I was saying that practicing acupuncture is medicine for the practitioner's soul. And when I'm saying soul, I'm not saying soul like any kind of religious soul or even Chinese medicine, Po or Hun soul. I'm just saying like, that book that came out a long time ago, Chicken Soup for the Soul, the stuff in here, the what makes you feel good as a person. That's what practicing acupuncture should be. Now, like I said, I've been working on this big Korean medicine or acupuncture project, and one thing that really sticks out in my mind about that, at least that's applicable to this, is one of the things in Korean medicine they talk about. You learn this knowledge, this medicine, you integrate it in so you can do it, but then when you do it, it projects from the heart. All the medicine comes from the heart, not necessarily your cognitive power. It's not, they're not, when I say that, it's not like don't know what you're doing, but I'm saying it's like not about your brain, it's about it coming from your heart. And we as practitioners are able to interact with people on a level that not many people in their life do, or not many people outside, just in general, get to have the opportunity to interact in that way. We, as practitioners, should show people that we're listening, we care. A lot of times people come in, they're sick. They don't feel like their doctors have listened, even though their partners, husbands, wives love them, they might not feel like they have really listened. That's what we're here for. We're here to listen. People that come in, even not with illnesses, but come in and tell me about how bad their days are or how bad their work is. And they're like, "Oh, sorry, man, I don't mean to dump on you." And I'm like, that's what my job's for. It's for me to hear you, understand your suffering, hear it. Acknowledge it. And that's really big medicine for a lot of people. Acknowledging that you hear what they're saying. We we as acupuncture practitioners, it's a great honor. I feel like it's a great honor to be able to be as intimately involved with so many people's lives. And when I say intimate, I'm not saying sexy intimate. Don't you begin sexy intimate with your patients. That's not what I'm talking about. But being part of so many people's lives in so many different ways. Not not only just hearing them and acknowledging their suffering, also their joys, helping them with, helping them with fertility, helping them, I mean, having them send you pictures of their, newborn babies. That's exciting. So very few people have the opportunity or honor to be able to have that space. So always remember that. It's the more you put in from your heart, the more that you invest. It's like an investment. It's like you put all the stuff pours out of you from your heart into your bank, and then suddenly it starts coming back to you. And it's just awesome. It's hard to get burned out when you're cycle, in that cycle, and you'll get there. At first, it might seem like a lot of hard work, but when you start getting patients and you're always seeing A's and B's, your book is not full of C's. It's impossible to get burned out. Don't overwork yourself. But to finish this out, you know, if you ever feel like you're getting burned out, do all the above that I've listed. But as a last resort, I want you to think about when a patient comes in and it's a follow-up, it's a follow-up patient, and they come in and you're talking to them about how they're doing and how things are going, and they start telling you how they feel like things are getting better. Remember that, how you feel, because it's awesome. It's awesome to hear people go, I think I'm getting better. They might not be in the clear yet, but you can see that they're feeling better. And then not only are you happy to hear that they're feeling better, but you feel awesome because you've helped them get to a place where they're feeling better. And that feeling that you get, that awesomeness that you get, remember that. Remember that sensation. And if you haven't had that happen yet, you'll get there. If you've just started out, but you'll get there. That feeling of when you know someone's getting better and you know you've been involved with the process. That's an awesome feeling. Think about that. Think about that sensation. Take 3 breaths. And any of that burned outness will go away. Because I mean, even me just thinking about it right now makes me smile. But that feeling will erase any kind of being burned out. So it's very hard to be burned out. Follow the list of things that I've said, so you don't think about that feeling of helping somebody, and now you go out. Oh, I was going to get ready to say go out and help somebody, but think of it this way: the way that I was going to say is how we react or interact with people. It's like we are interacting with them in a very basic level, basic human level. It's like I've seen videos of professional runners. They're in a race, and the guy or girl that's way out in front falls, and everybody's bummed out, right? And they're injured, and everybody else runs past them, right? It's a race. We're trying to win the race. And then you see the same thing of a video shot of 5-year-olds. They're running in a race. There's a person way ahead, and they fall. But what happens at a different place, at a different time? All the other little runners run up and they stop. and they help that person up, and they go across the finish line together. That's the level I'm talking about that we help our patients on. And then as people get adults, they forget about that. I don't know. I don't know how or why, but we lose our base ability to recognize another human that's suffering. And that's where we as acupuncturists come in. It's an honor to go out and help somebody. Ciao, guys. Don't get burned out.